Hello, everybody, and welcome to our first edition of our Future Ready Workforces series here at Zensai. And we have an exciting session here today together with Fosway Group. And we have two amazing speakers with us today. Our first speaker being Robin Daniels, who's Chief Business Officer here at Zensai. And also we are joined by David Perring, who's Chief Insight Officer at Fosway Group. And for those that don't know Fosway Group, it is Europe's largest independent HR analyst. So welcome both of you.
Thank you so much. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Yeah, likewise. Really excited to be part of the session. So thank you for having me.
So just to kick off, I want to share with you all what you'll be learning today. So the first one being why workforce planning is becoming a strategic HR priority. And the second point being how AI is reshaping workforce strategy. So we're all experiencing this shift when AI is now coming into our workplaces. And thirdly, we are going to share how to build true workforce intelligence. Before we get rolling, though, I want to share with you a few housekeeping rules so that we can all enjoy the webinar together. So the first one being we have intentionally kept audio and camera off for attendees. This is due for privacy reasons, but we do share the recording afterwards. So should you want to rewatch or catch on replay, you're welcome to, of course, access the recording. Also, we have a Q&A section. So you'll probably see at the top of your screen, right next to the chat section. And we will be taking your questions to the speakers later on in the session. Oh, and I don't know why my screen just stopped sharing. So let me just share one more time. I'll just share there for you. Hopefully you will see my screen in a second. Good. And then after the Q&A, afterwards, we also have a discussion. So just to differentiate the two, we have the Q&A section at the top, and next to it, we also have the chat as well. So also the duration of this webinar will be around 45 minutes. I know we've booked an hour, but we hope to give you a little bit of time back as well. And we are now going on to the agenda. So first off, David is going to open up the session and he's going to talk about what's changing in workforce planning and skills. And then Robin will take it away with how HR needs to evolve in this AI-driven world. And then we'll follow up with live Q&A. So do ask your questions in the Q&A section and we will take them afterwards as well. But first off, I would love for everyone to use the chat section and let us know where you're calling in from. So I'm in Copenhagen today in Denmark. Robin, where are you?
I am in Madison, Wisconsin today. Just got here from Denmark yesterday.
Ooh, and David?
I'm in a lovely little village called Highclere in England at the moment, famous for Downton Abbey, if you're into that sort of thing.
Oh, I love Downton Abbey, one of my favorite series. And look, we've got people from South Africa, Vienna, Los Angeles, Surrey, Baltimore, all the way around the world. How epic is that? So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And David, if you can kick us off, that would be fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much, MC, and thanks, Robin and team, for having me here today. I know we've got something sort of really, I've got too many slides as usual that I'm going to try and take you through. But I want to take you on a little bit of a journey around this sense of what's happening with the future of work and some of the things that are evolving in this market space overall, around probably what is the most important and defining topic for HR as I see it for probably the next 5 years, if not longer, which is building the workforce which is required to deliver what work's going to happen next. And I think what we've seen probably over the last few years is this sense of the fourth industrial revolution, which was a term coined by the World Economic Forum probably about 7, 8 years ago, and was picked up by Tim Berners-Lee. I'm sure you know who Tim Berners-Lee is, the inventor of the internet. It's something around sort of how the next wave of intelligent work was going to hit the workforce. But in some ways, we've already been living that, even by 2016, 2017, 2018, when they started to talk about this, because in blue collar environments, automation and robots have been part of the fabric of the environment for a long time, right? When I was a young person in the 80s, maybe before some of you were even born, robots were a feature of manufacturing. And what's maybe changed significantly over the last 5 years in particular is the focus of that automation has moved from being that sort of blue collar environment into white collar work. And we know that that whole area is just about to expand and boom. And I'm sure we feel it a little bit in our personal lives, the invasion of AI and the interactions that we make on a personal level, but increasingly in work. And a really interesting stat from IBM last year, they did a report and analysis of EMEA leaders. They found that almost 80% of EMEA leaders expect to accelerate the innovation and their adoption of AI. So there's a whole groundswell of the future and changing work. And we see that also in what HR is up to as well. When we ask HR teams around currently what are the most significant business challenges that you face as a HR leader, as a business within your business. Number one, right, very predictably, performance and profitability. So we need to have a functioning business. But number two, AI and the future of work. Now, this is something that's really blossomed probably in the last couple of years. And just to give you a sense of that momentum, we're currently doing a survey of L&D teams. And for the last 10 years, when we were doing that survey, pretty much 7 out of those 10 years, compliance was the number one driver for learning strategy. What's happened this year in our 2026 survey, which is still live, AI is the number one driver behind learning strategy. And that beats upskilling, that beats business transformation, it beats career development, and compliance comes in 6th out of the list. So we see this sort of emerging, this growing momentum just around this sense of work is changing, AI is the key disruptor, and we're seeing that work through. And it's fascinating because it starts to raise questions of AI is going to be here. What work am I going to be doing? And it starts to also raise the question, not just for me and for you, but all the people that work in our organizations are we ready for the future of work as an organization overall? Do we know what the future might bring? Do we know what our people have today? Do we know where we're going tomorrow, really? There's some interesting stats that came out of LinkedIn. They released a report just a month ago, and they said that 86% of companies lack the ability to see its skills, build or acquire what's needed, and ahead of market demands. So the actual ability to keep pace with this evolving sense of work it is tough. And we know from previous LinkedIn studies that actually from 2015 to about 2025, just to stay relevant in your existing job, you were going to have to acquire 3 to 5 new skills, and your job tasks had changed by up to 41%. Now, what we're seeing is that it's accelerating faster and faster and faster. And the extent to which people expect AI to take over their work is really significant. We did a survey last year in our HR Realities research where we asked HR people, HR professionals, how much of your role in HR today do you believe could be automated or be made redundant by AI and still be effective? So how much of your work can be done by AI and still be effective? Pretty much the headline was about half of what I do in HR could be automated and still be effective. Now, we've also asked a similar question of L&D professionals, and they came back with exactly the same profile. And we've also done some research and find out what other audiences take marketing, for example, and other maybe a bit more of a back office function. They think the same sort of number, 50%, which raises the question to some extent, what will we be doing? Will we be looking at the bottom of a coffee cup thinking, so what work should I have been up to? Or am I just going to sit with a pile of notepaper, blank desk? But it also raises the question maybe of what should we be doing? What things would provide more value for us as individuals and our businesses? And the good news, right, for all the change and the 79% of leaders saying we're going to bring more AI to transform our organization, around 40% of EMEA businesses want to prioritize bringing their people with them. Now, if you're in that 60% who don't care, good luck. But if you're in those organizations at 37% who want to say, I want to bring my people with me into the new future of work, that is a huge opportunity for HR and learning and career and mobility to take a role in helping organizations navigate that. So this is all up to play for. This is all possible and available for us to take advantage of. But the question still remains, what work will you be doing? And ultimately, there's a really simple equation to understand why you'll still be employed. It's really a matter of understanding what is the valuable work, what work is really driving value in your organizations, be that customer satisfaction, profitability at the bottom line, excellence, the ability to change as an organization and transform, the ability to do new things, all the value of all the work that gets done. And you can break that down into the tasks that you can do and minus the AI that takes away those tasks. So really it's what valuable work is there and what work is left for me to do, or what tasks are left for me to do after the AI has taken certain tasks away. Because that AI doesn't do tasks, sorry, it doesn't do skills, it just does tasks. What you get left with is the valued skills. And that points us in the direction both of reskilling, upskilling, de-skilling, and makes you understand why you are valuable in organizations. And that whole area, understanding what work can be augmented, replaced by bots, what bits are better done by humans and human teams, that's already in the process of sort of evolving and being shown to us through workforce intelligence. And what we're seeing in the background is a real push towards skills-based organizations. And it's amazing in terms of the some might call it groupthink, but I think it's just the sense of logic that takes us to a place where in order to help us navigate into the future, to help accent what those valuable skills are, to help people find their way through and understand the people that we've got today, actually adopting skills-based organizations thinking is right out there. But for most organizations, it's really early days. Only 16% in our survey say they're already skills-based organizations, but that's against a backdrop of almost 90% that say they want to be. So there's maybe things holding people back, but this sort of short advantage that those 16% have is something that everybody else can start to catch up on. And it's something that I'm going to talk you through very quickly, how that's evolving. So I want to take you through, how do you build a workforce ready for what's next? How does it work? And I'm going to take you through a little example, a little journey, a little diagram that explains the process of effectively strategic workforce intelligence and how that feeds into more agile, more, what's the word I'm looking for? More dynamic, skills-based organizations. Now, it starts off in the top left with building an individual profile, and that can be something that individuals submit, can be that they share their CV, you can ingest their work history, but what you effectively do is build a profile around everybody who works in your company, really based around their job work, their qualifications, their experience, their expertise, their aspirations, their skills. And that can be done by the individual themselves, or increasingly using AI, you can start to use skills inference and validation. So you start to ingest their CV, you start to look at the certifications and make assumptions around what they should be able to do as a result of the expertise. In certain instances, we're even seeing people bringing recognition and feedback data that helps people qualify the skills that they announce. And what tends to happen typically is that people underreport their skills, and this enables you to get a much richer picture. What we're also then seeing is the AI doing the processing in the background of an assessment of future work and the level at which that can be automated. And that gives us that sense of tasks that can be done by AI, what's left for human beings. And that really starts to give you a sense of the future shape of work and roles. This whole area around job roles, work, programs, projects, gigs, and assignments, that is what work is available. And we can start to map then with strategic workforce planning, this sense of org design and capability reporting to say, well, if we've got these people who work in our organization with these validated skills, cross-reference to certifications, we know how we're going to think about the disruption from AI, then therefore these are the potential gaps that we have to fulfill our business plan, our business purpose, our business evolution. And really that's thinking about, I can match David to this future role in marketing or this future role in projects. And there are certain gaps. And that gives us an indication, if David isn't fully skilled in those areas, about actually, do we want to build him up to help him take advantage of those opportunities? And that's where that 37% I talked about came in earlier on, where people are really committed to that as EMEA organizations. Or are we going to find people who could do that work, which isn't David, right? He's not relevant for that future role. So maybe we buy it in, or maybe we borrow it by working with a partner, or maybe we use a bot. And that gives us a whole sense of the shape of work. And then what we can do is by adding in learning and making recommendations around work, we can start to help individuals like MC, like Rebecca, like Robin say, actually, if I was to develop my skills in this area, I could be more relevant. I can be more employable. I can increase my employability. And by creating or increasing the transparency of the availability of work and real work to me, I can empower individuals to apply for jobs that they maybe didn't even think they were able to do. And that takes us on this whole journey of people starting to work to grow their profile, which gives us a continuous loop of capability building, but based and grounded in intelligence, based and grounded on the insights that we've gathered around our people and how work is evolving, and giving them some steer about how to make the best of those opportunities. And we've seen that about evolution pretty much from 2017, 2018, 2019, but it's really skyrocketed now. And what I mean by that, and it sounds a bit of a dream maybe, of all this strategic workforce intelligence, is it real? What the map I took you through, is that something that's genuine? Actually, what's out there, we've been profiling as Fosway about 70 talent and people success providers. I can tell you for certain that this is something that is real and it's here. When we've done a mapping of mainstream features, next wave features, things which we talk about as being edge advantage, so niche things that are making a difference. There's so many of those, even in this early stage of the AI building its way into HR, we're seeing that evolve. And the things that are already mainstream in talent and people success solutions are AI generated skills, tasks, and work ontologies. So that whole definition model of, so how do we characterize skills at work and work ontologies? How do we structure work and what does work look like? Those things have already been built by AI, and they can contextualize even by scanning your job descriptions and your work histories and people's data to say, this is what it looks like in your organization. 80% of organizations who are providers have that on their roadmap. Almost 60% have that fixed sort of functionality live, which is a great springboard for every buyer, every corporate, because it puts you in a position of saying, this is where we are today. This is the people that we have, and this is potentially where we're going. And that whole sense of actually maybe we've got skills profiles in different places, from different sources, from talent acquisition, from internal mobility to learning. Actually, already people are starting to find ways of aggregating that along with people's individual profiles and ingesting skills. Half of organized providers have that sort of feature, and half of those are already live. And what we've done, and just to give you a sense of this, if we started to map through from those 60, 70 providers, a sense of what's evolving. So even in people operations, we have this group that says strategic workforce management. The thickness of the line gives you a link through to how much has already been delivered with customers. And we see the things around skills-based strategic workforce planning, external skills market intelligence, skills profile validation, task work mapping, ontology definition, skills ontology leveling, which is the normalization of that data. Those are the thickest lines. And this was as of the end of last year. We're working on analysis for this year. So already 25% of that is live overall, but the thick lines show you the weighting towards that area. And if I look at the next area, next part of this, you can see the thick lines, the things that are starting to come together are based around internal mobility marketplace. That's that link between individuals and the real work, the real vacancies, the real opportunities, career development, employee engagement, learning management systems. Those are the focus areas where you're finding more AI adopted in the platforms, which enable you to do just the things that I highlighted before. And where we're up to, I think, is this sense of people in sales, for example, would talk about sales velocity, which is a critical metric for how quickly your company generates revenue, represented the speed with which leads are followed through. We probably need to get our own house together in terms of HR and start talking about talent velocity. The guys at LinkedIn talk about maturity model. I think it's worthwhile digging a bit deeper to say, actually, it's time for us to talk about how quickly it takes us to create an even higher performing organization and higher performing people, because we have the right number of people at the right scale who, and it's not just people, it's also their digital AI worker equivalents, which make up the workforce. So the scale of our workforce just isn't ourselves, but it's ourselves powered by AI and supported by AI, times the productivity gain of actually having more proficient people with whatever multiplier AI provides to enable us to do more work faster, plus the utilization of that AI and automation processes. So people's engagement is part of that story, but also the number of automated workflows, and then the time to value. So how quickly we can bring that together. I would suggest that might be a way for us to start to nail down a sense of urgency, of there is a huge opportunity. We can start to see that today with our workforce intelligence, but actually that opportunity goes to waste if we aren't able to grasp it and take hold of it. And the systems and the workflow that I've taken you through start to give us a clue to that. And I think we're sort of starting to see overall an evolution of HR into intelligence-led HR. And that is all about, not just about business success, but ultimately about human success. And I know that's something that's very close to the guys at Zensai's heart around human success and a human success score. But high-performing organizations need to start now, and it's the journey that you're going to be going on over the next six months, maybe 2 years, in augmenting that change, which is going to define the successful organizations from the unsuccessful ones. And just to wrap up, I just want to sort of put you in, I suppose, in context, the way I think about this. A lot of the things that we see around the future of work is about optimizing work. It's about having the right tools available to the right people who are aligned around the right goals, doing the right work at the right time. But increasingly, the intelligence gives a picture of that and how far away we might be from that, looking out to the future. But the other really important part of this story is how much we can energize individuals to grasp that opportunity, to feel enriched and empowered, and have the agency to want to be part of that future organization as well, or not just to be victims of automation. So that's what I'd probably get you to think about is, in this future, which is maybe based around human success, how can we optimize work using some of the things I talked about to help us navigate into the future of work? But how do we fill people with the passion, the enthusiasm, the resilience, the engagement, the shared sense of purpose, the upskilling and reskilling that enable them to leap into that world rather than maybe hide away from it? So, Robin, I've come to the end. I must shut up because I've gone on for too long. But
I could listen to you all day. It's great. You get so fired up about this, David. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. And I think it's safe to say that when you and I met a few years ago, we have a shared passion for how do we unlock the full potential of people by giving them the purpose, motivation, success that they need to feel empowered every single day, especially when you see the statistics about how unhappy and disengaged people are. We both share that sense of this is the most important thing to unlock. But first of all, before we get to I have so many questions and so many things to ask you because there's so much great content there. Let's just give it up for David. If you're on listening, just give him some kudos in the chat, or react with some hearts, emojis, and clapping. I think it's
very
just
kind.
awesome to listen to you. I also joined Zensai about 3 years ago because I'm also personally on a mission of making sure that we create the conditions where people can succeed every single day. I've had the fortune of working in some amazing companies, mostly in the US, Salesforce, Box, LinkedIn, and others. And what I've learned there has really kind of been around how do you get great people together, focused on a mission that matters, so they can show up every single day doing great work. And I think everything you talk about ultimately comes down to, there's a lot, of course, to unpack there, but it's around how do you create high performance teams? How do you have the right skills, the right people, the right motivation, so you can point that in a direction so everyone's showing up every single day doing just incredible work that's good for the company, but also, of course, also good for themselves in a way that they show up and feel energized and motivated by as well. Let me ask you a question around, just to kind of dig into some of the things that you shared. There's so much to unpack. There's a lot of talk about AI, of course, and let's get a little metaphysical first here. It's not just about roles changing and skills changing, but also most people's identities are tied into their work. And so how do you think about, how should HR leaders or executives think about providing that comfort for their people, knowing that everything's about to change? What is the best advice that you could give? Because I know you speak to a lot of leaders all the time.
I think it's about relationship, and I think there's something about the relationship and sense of belonging that we instill as part of our culture as an organization. I think there is the risk as we go through this change and create a lot of uncertainty around work and people's identity. And I think you're really right on the button there, Robin, because I think there's something about how it's the people that I'm surrounded by. And it's the connection that I feel, especially in this disconnected world, right? We worked remotely. How much we lean into that employee engagement is this, I suppose, the HR phrase, but how we lean into that belonging is something that's really, really important. And that comes out in the values of the organization itself. We've had some really interesting conversations with some pharma companies around their adoption of AI in the hiring process. And they would be doing things, just an example of video interviewing, and they were using bots to do with video interviewing. They've started to rein back on some of that because they started to listen to themselves and go, but one of our core values is to be human. If we do too much using the AI as part of our first touch, are we being true to ourselves and our identity? So, and they switched some of it off. Not very. So, so what am I trying to say? I think you have to remember that the human connection really matters. You have to have invested in that human connection and a sense of identity and belonging. If that doesn't already exist, then that's going to be tough. And I think your people will be more stressed out. And I think one of the interesting things, even around having things like internal mobility, there was this whole thing around telemarketplaces. I'm sure you've seen them, right? It always made me feel a bit uneasy because who was my touchstone as a team? Did I need that? Who kept me grounded when it was a lot of stress? Because I'm maybe a bit more, I'm unbelievably a bit of an introvert. but
I can't tell.
Honestly. So my energy is like, how do I get connected when, do you know what I mean? It's like, if there's too much change and I haven't got somebody I can go to and feel that network, do I feel as though I'm really here? So I think we have to really look after the culture. That's my
I think you've touched upon something that's like the cornerstone of the future that we're going into that's very uncertain, is that sense of belonging. And it can sound like a very soft word in some ways and a little fluffy. How do you measure that? But I actually think it's the biggest unlock. If you can make people feel like they belong to a mission, a project, or a team. That gives them the energy to show up every single day, feeling like they're part of something bigger than themselves that's worth fighting for, and they will do better work. But when you don't feel that, it's also very obvious. Why am I working on this project that nobody cares about? I'm not jiving with this team. I don't believe in the mission. Because the opposite is equally true. But thank you for sharing that. Let's try to get a little tactical, because you shared so much in your presentation as well. I worked at LinkedIn in 2018. Long time ago, it feels like. And I was working on the keynote for the CEO at that point. the keynote was all about how companies are going to use skills to do better hiring and management of their employees and so on. So this is nearly 10 years ago. And here we are in 2026, still talking about skills. Why is this time different? What has changed? Is it the readiness of organizations? Is it the technology has changed? Is it everything? Like, I'd love to get your take on that.
I think you're right. So, and I think for Link, you're so blessed to be part on that journey with LinkedIn. And I think clearly that LinkedIn organization being part of Microsoft is a very visionary part of the world, right? And especially with the technical disciplines that LinkedIn relies on, actually it was the right time for that organization. And you would have been at the bleeding edge, right? Many organizations at that time were trying to suss out, how do we do this? And ultimately, there weren't that many choices of provider that you could have gone to help you on that journey. I remember, because I'm old, being part of a skills program or joining a tail end of a skills program that had been going for 11 months and turning up. And they still hadn't defined what the skills were. And they were still having fights with the business to define that. That was a long journey, right? And I'm glad we're out of those days. But I think what we've seen probably change significantly, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years. So that sort of puts us 4 years after where you were with LinkedIn, is the emergence of many more choices of partner and the maturity of the AI to generate the sorts of skills profiles and purposes and all that data is so much faster than it's ever been. We talk to certain vendors and they say, yeah, take us about 3 months to get things up and running. Actually, it probably takes us a couple of weeks, really, but you have to go through the internal validation. And actually, we'll probably spend more time going through a selection process than it will do to even just get hold of the initial data, right? Everything is on the employee, on the corporate side, but those barriers in terms of what technology partners out there, what can they do? There has been so much advancement in that space. And the maturity of people who've not only applied the technology, but actually applied it successfully has gone off on a hockey stick as well. So I think hats off to LinkedIn for being the bleeding edge. I think you're probably in a privileged position that only is now becoming available to everybody else at a cost that's and a scale that's easier to realize.
That's the beauty of technology. As it matures, it becomes democratized and accessible to everyone, right? You also talk a lot about strategic workforce planning or strategic workforce intelligence, which is a newer term. I think it's maybe not as in the vocabulary of other people yet. But I love the idea, because I also remember we've been talking about this idea for years, but I've always felt like the holy grail in some ways of HR, because if you have the right knowledge about your people and their skills and performance, then you can plan for how to basically create a high performance culture by focusing those skills of those people on the right things at the right time. But it's also, you can't just do that in isolation. You also need to know, what is the goals of the organization? What are we going to be building in 3 years? Where are we going to go in 5 years? And you have to marry a gazillion different data points in order to make that happen. I remember when I was the chief marketing officer at a company called WeWork, I had a team of close to 400 people. And I was sitting in spreadsheets trying to map out what skills and roles I needed to hire for in the next 3 years that I could share with our CFO. It feels so antiquated, and that is only 6-7 years ago. So that chart that you showed, very extensive, is this like one system? Is it many systems? How does a company, where should it get started? If somebody's listening in, it can feel quite daunting and overwhelming. But where would you start? Where would you recommend?
I think my recommendation would be to start just in trying to understand where you are today. So you can potentially make a tactical buy just around, let's get a solution in which will help us analyze the data that we've already got within our HR system and other important data sources like performance management and learning, and maybe some business data around job descriptions, whatever it happens to be, just to help us understand where we are today. And there's some really good providers out there, right? People who've been around for the last 10 years who can help you then accelerate. And the reason I say that's an important step is because as this is not an HR initiative, this is a business transformation initiative. But as HR, you need to be in command of the data to say, I know what's going on. And to some extent, historically, HR's had a bit of a bad reputation of if the C-suite asked how many people work for us and how much are they paid, HR would often go, give me a couple of months and I might be able to tell you, right? And that's never a good answer. But I think increasingly, what we can do is lean into just getting a position of what does my organization look like today? Because just by having that and doing some benchmarking against some of my close competitors, which is all part of that external data, you can start to have a proactive conversation with your C-suite to say, we're here, our competitors are up here. Does that concern us? Should we start to invest in understanding where the future direction of our business is and our ability to bridge that gap with the people that we have or our plans? So I think start off just with the first goal of how am I going to mobilize commitment from my C-suite and or an important pillar of my business. Once you reach that hurdle, the rest of the market, if you're waiting for your core cloud HR platform to do it, which you probably won't, right? This is very niche functionality. Then at the end of the day, you've made that step. If the cloud HR platform hasn't caught up with where you need to be, you've got permission to say to the C-suite, you know, this system, that system, SAP, Workday, they don't do what we need to enable us to do the business transformation. I need to find a partner that can help us move us there because this is now a burning platform. And that will open up the decision process. So I'm very realistic about that. You may not be able to get this to happen straight off the bat. We've seen increasingly many things like talent acquisition teams wary to step out of their swim lane to say we need to do more strategic workforce planning. We've seen the same from learning teams, not holding the business accountable enough to say, so what sort of pipeline do we need for our business? And probably also reticence from some CHROs, but I think get hold of the data first and buy into a system that will help you profile. That's what I'd suggest.
I think it's great advice. I also think we're finally at a point in time where technology has matured so much in the HR space that you start correlating performance, learning, growth of people to actually business outcomes, which I think it was always very hard because if you ask most CEOs or most business executives, what's the most important asset? They all go, our people. And then you say, well, what are you doing to make them grow and invest in them and so on? They go, well, because we can't really correlate that to better performance, we don't do much really. It's kind of usually get blank stares. But I think we're at a point in time now where technology has matured so much in order to be able to, we can give, especially HR leaders, that data that they need to show how investing in somebody's learning or development or growth or belonging actually helps with business performance, which means that they can get a better seat at the table. We actually at Zensai last year, we launched what we call the Human Success Score, which is really meant to give HR leaders a single score, not a gazillion different metric, but a single score that tells you how is our company doing, not just once a year, but week over week over week. That will then give you the indicator of whether or not you're doing the right for your people and whether or not that's actually turning into better business performance. And if not, then we'll give you the actions and the insights. Here's what you should be focusing on. This team is not performing. Here's the skills you need to do. This team over here, this department is maybe not engaged. There's just lack of belonging here. Giving you so you can actually go and take some action. Because I think we've all been drowning in data and insights for a long time. But what we really need, I think, is the action to actually go do something about it.
Yeah, I think it's fun. And I when you guys talked about the human success score, I think it's one of the most interesting things that I've heard for a long time. Everybody starts to get behind that sort of mentality. Your reasoning behind that of give people or give your C-suite a really simple metric to give them the hook. If it's going in a positive direction, that's great, right? We can sit back. If it's going in a negative direction, let's dig into the detail. I think that was a stroke of genius. We don't see enough of that from software providers.
No, I appreciate you saying that. We when I joined the company about 3 years ago, we thought hard about how do we do something that really gives HR leaders that insight that they have so they can go, because again, everybody says they care most about the people. It's the most important. But because you can't prove the value of people, in many cases, it's always about retention numbers or these annual surveys. Like, what do you do on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis? And so we've been trying to solve that by taking all these different data points into a single score. That's very simple, kind of like what you have on your Apple Watch or your Oura Ring or your Garmin. Like instead of a gazillion different metrics, one score that tells you where you are today and where you should be going in order to do the right thing. So I know we're coming into time. I think you and I could be chatting all day long, which I think is wonderful. Is there any final piece of advice that you want to give to people as they listen in here on just how to get started on this journey of transformation?
Yeah, I think there's two things that you should do. First, go and find out what business transformation projects are happening in your organization, right? If you're not part of those in the HR team, and that's at a business unit level or organizational wide level, then you're not doing yourselves any favors. So start to ask around and understand what parts of your organization are, to some extent, and this is good just business consulting with the organization, have the highest opportunity from the level of innovation that AI can bring, right? So you may have to talk to the CIO, you may have to talk to different C leaders with different responsibilities, but connect into the business to understand where the hotspots are, where they might need assistance. So you need to find willing partners, and that always helps things move better. And the other is just like we said before, start to find ways of surfacing the data. Some of you may need to build a little bit of a concept exploration budget to build some of those things in. So know your internal processes that will get you some money and able to start to invest in some of the strategic workforce intelligence that will help you direct the business about, so where's the scale of opportunity and what should we be doing about it? I think that's your best first step. I always have this phrase about act tactically, but think strategically. Know where the big direction is going, but see if you can create some quick short wins. The world is changing so fast. Don't wait.
Love this advice. And just for those of you who don't know necessarily who we are at Zensai, we are an HR platform provider. We focus on delivering this in a software form for all companies around the world. And we're of course happy to talk to any of you who are willing to learn more about this. But basically our philosophy is, how do we create the right environment for people to show up every single day to do the best work of their life? That's what we're all about. We can talk much more about that at some other point in time. You can, of course, also go to our website. I'm going to hand it over to our lovely MC to close us out. Back to you, MC.
Hello, all. Hopefully you can see me on stage now. What a fantastic session. Thank you, David and Robin. I love that last point of, be tactical, but think strategically. I think that is ultimately what we need to do in business, and to make sure also that HR have a seat at the table. And, you're mentioning also about sales philosophies and how can we have this talent velocity. Amazing, David. Thank you for sharing your insights. Amazing. And thank you, Robin, as well, for being such an amazing host. I wanted to thank the people attending as well for joining us for this session, and just wanted to give a little heads up that there will be an email from us tomorrow, and you will get some lovely links to the latest Fosway reports from David as well, and a recording of this webinar. So I hope you can join us for our next session, which happens in a few months' time as well. But we'll keep you tuned for that when it comes your way. Thank you again, David and Robin. Let's give some kudos if we can.
Thank you. Thank you, MC, and thank you, David. It's always great to talk to you, truly.
Thank you. It's been wonderful. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
See you, everyone.
Bye.